the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and good evening. I have one announcement. It's actually a list of the vacancies we have on boards and commissions. We have 2 vacancies on the Agricultural Commission as of June 30th, 2018. That was voted at town meeting. We have 1 vacancy on the Architectural Preservation District Commission. We have multiple vacancies on the Cultural Council as of June 30th, 2018. We have 2 vacancies on the Public Access Cable Committee, and we have 1 vacancy on the Personnel Board. So anyone who has an interest in any of those positions, we invite you to fill out a talent bank form here at Town Hall. And if you have any questions about any of those committees, feel free to contact us at the Selectmen's office, and we'll put you in touch with somebody to answer any questions you may have. In accordance with the requirements of open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel. Is there any public comment from the board?
I'd like to go on record and thank all the townspeople who came out to town meeting starting at 9 a.m. and staying until 4 p.m. We had a quorum throughout, and it was actually a pretty healthy quorum towards the end, which sometimes a lot of people would not stay as long as they did. So thank you all for coming out.
Is there any public comment from the public?
Hello. Julia Callahan, 24 Beale Street. Before I begin, I wanted to say that it was my intention to make this comment at the end of last week's meeting, but apparently I'm moving a bit slower in my 3rd trimester, and I was clearly on my way to the podium last week when the chair looked at me and said that public comment was now ended. I had sat through a 3-hour meeting and wanted to make what amounted to a 60-second comment, but I was flatly denied that opportunity. If, as the Board of Selectmen repeatedly claims, public outreach is one of its goals, then it could start by giving the public time to speak. So here's what I was trying to say last week. Sorry that I moved too slowly. In regard to transforming the Passios building into a town hall and creating a municipal campus on and around that location. First, I wanted to say that I work at Lunenburg High School. Recently, we had to shelter in place due to a suspicious vehicle parked on the access road. Though this vehicle and its driver, upon investigation, posed no threat, it did create fear and anxiety for students and faculty for the duration of the shelter-in-place procedure. I felt that, and I witnessed it firsthand. That's the world in which we live. Bringing more traffic onto the school campus could pose unforeseen consequences for student and staff safety and security. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Sir. All right, Chief.
Yeah, Jim Marino, the police chief. No, that's okay. Hannah Anderson, member of the Finance Committee, she's kind of organizing a grassroots effort to raise funds to buy some AEDs for the police department.
Okay, what are AEDs, just so people at home know what
Defibrillators.
Right.
Right. So I'd like to thank her for the efforts already that she's made, which has been incredible. But just so the public knows that she's in the process of organizing a basketball game. She's come up with a team to play against the police department, and it's going to take place on June 14th at the middle high school gym. So I'm inviting the public to come. There'll be more about it on social media and in the news. We'll try to get it in the newspaper and get more word out there as to some of the details that I'm not aware of, because I just learned about it today. She's full of energy, obviously, and wants to do this thing right away. So June 14th is coming up quick. I hope we can get a lot of people there, to watch the game. But her, as I said, she's trying to raise money. So, we appreciate some support from the public if they can do it. And, they can watch some old and young police officers get beat up by members of the public on the court. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief. Okay. Our first appointment this evening is 705, a liquor license violation, J&M Sports Bar, 5 Summer Street, number 10, license number 00047-GP0636. I'd like the licensee and/or representative to come forward, please. And the police representative to come as well. Let me just tell you what we're going to do. The hearing procedure, anyone who will be testifying during this hearing needs to be sworn in. We'll hear the town's testimony first. The licensee will have an opportunity to testify or respond. The board will ask questions. I will close the public hearing, and then the board will deliberate. At that deliberation, we'll determine if, in fact, there was a violation, and if there was a violation, we'll deliberate on any penalty recommendations. I'd like to ask the town to go first. Sergeant Hebert, would you raise your right hand, please? You solemnly and sincerely affirm, under the penalties of perjury, that the testimony you are about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Good evening. This violation was on 3/20/18 at approximately 1:21 in the morning. I was on patrol. I observed 4 vehicles in the parking lot of J&M Sports Bar. The bar was dark, however, you could see that the TV was still on inside. I proceeded around the back of the building, observed a 5th vehicle behind the building, at which time I turned around, pulled to the side of the building. Advised dispatch that I would be out checking on the business, and exited my cruiser. As I was doing so, a 5th vehicle pulled in with a female operator. She was on the phone, the window was rolled down. I heard her say, "Okay," with a pause, and "I'll be in to get the money." I spoke to her, advised her she couldn't go into the bar after closing, and tried to open the door to the bar, which were locked. I had her call whoever she was just talking to and have that person come out. A couple seconds later, Ms. Thibodeau exited the bar. We had conversation as far as what she was doing there after closing, who owned some of the cars that were in the parking lot. Some were employees that were left. One was the bartender's girlfriend's car. I asked if she was inside, at which point she asked if we were going to do this again. I reminded her of previous incidents which were in front of this board and meetings that were still to come up 2 weeks later from that date. Subsequently entered the bar. There was her ride, Matthew Shibarasi was in there. The bartender's girlfriend was sitting at the bar, I forget her name, and the bartender was inside. And that's that's the basis of the violation, is the 2 people in the bar after closing.
Any questions of Sergeant Hebert at this point?
Yes. I'm looking at your report, Sergeant, and I'm seeing more than that names. I'm seeing 6 people potentially in the bar.
Those are you looking at the first page? That's just the list of the people that own the cars.
Okay.
There was
Okay.
4 people in the bar. There was Ms.
Okay.
Thibodeau, who said she was the manager on duty that night.
Okay.
There was the bartender. Shibarasi would have been her ride, and I can give you the bartender's girlfriend's name. It was Alicia Gallant.
Okay. And one other question that I have regarding your report. In your report, you indicated when you talked with the owner, Melissa Thibodeau, that you believed or smelled the odor of alcohol. So
I
can you
did.
just expound on that?
I did. She had bloodshot, glassy eyes. She had an odor of alcoholic beverages coming from her breath. She said she was the manager on duty that night. It was a Monday. When we went into the bar, I noted that she never went behind the bar to do any type of closing activities. She stayed on the patron side of the bar, and her vehicle was also left there overnight, and she said that Shibarasi was her ride home, indicating to me that she felt she was too intoxicated to drive.
And just to be clear, she indicated to you that she was the manager on duty?
She did.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Thibodeau, would you stand, please? Raise your right hand.
Anyone else too?
Is anybody else going to testify on your behalf?
The bartender is also going to testify. I'm Donna Pollock here representing Ms. Thibodeau.
Okay, fine. And the bartender, your name, sir? Okay, would you both raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly and sincerely affirm, under the penalties of perjury, that the testimony you are about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
I'm sorry, Ms. Pollack, are you going to testify? Because I didn't see you be sworn in.
No, I'm here as her attorney.
Okay, so you're not going to be saying anything?
Well, I intend to speak, but I'm not going to be testifying.
Okay, she doesn't have to, okay.
Ms. Thibodeau, would you like to respond to the officer?
I have been on duty.
Could you come to the
need
microphone, please?
microphone.
I had drank earlier in the evening, stopped at 9 o'clock because I was closing that night. I was there helping him. I was on the other side of the bar when he came in, but because there was still, cleaning that needs to be done, and the faster you get it done, the quicker we can get out. My ride came to get me, came in before we closed. His ride came to get in. Neither one of them were patrons of the bar that night. And as far as with Maria, she had showed up and I had gone outside to talk with her. She was on the phone. She wasn't coming in the building. Knowing that, obviously, she's not, customers cannot come in after hours.
But you're testifying that you did have a drink that night and you were the manager on duty, is that correct?
I hadn't had anything in hours.
But you were the manager on duty within the period of time that you did have a drink?
No, I came on at 9 o'clock.
Okay. Any questions?
Who was the manager on duty prior to 9 o'clock?
The bartender.
So you were in the bar, patronizing the bar, but
No.
not on duty?
No, I went there at 9 o'clock to close.
Okay, I guess I'm a little bit confused. I thought you indicated that you had had a drink, but that you stopped at 9
Not there.
o'clock. Not there?
No, I have pool on Mondays.
Okay.
Is the bartender listed as a manager in your establishment on your paperwork?
I think I'm the only one listed as manager, but he was the one that was, in charge.
Okay.
And you've been before us several times in recent months, and we've made it very clear that everyone has to be out of the bar by 12:45.
Yes, and everybody has been since the last meeting. This happened before. This incident was before the last meeting.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So the violation was on February 21st. We had a hearing on April 3rd, but this incident occurred on March 20th, which was prior to the April 3rd hearing.
Yes.
What was after the previous hearing that we had?
It was after the March 6th hearing.
Right.
So we've had a violation on August 7th and a hearing on October 3rd, a violation on January 10th, a hearing on March 6th, a violation on February 21st, a hearing on April 3rd, and a violation on March 20th and a hearing on May 8th, which is tonight.
Mhm.
If I may.
Please.
Sergeant Hebert, I know that you routinely patrol the bars after closing to ensure that patrons are out and that there's no issues at any establishments. Since April 3rd, have you had an opportunity to patrol this area, and have you seen any additional violations?
I personally have not. The license has been suspended during that time, so they were closed for a while with the insurance and the licensing issues. However, I can tell you there was a violation the Monday night. They got their license back on Sunday. There was a violation Monday night into Tuesday that Officer Campbell and Officer Ledger dealt with. That was,
What was that date? Do you?
it was the Monday, their license got reinstated on, was it the 14th
Yes.
of April?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it would have been the 15th into the 16th. And then there was the violation on the that Wednesday, the insurance violation, which closed them down for another week.
So on the 17th, there was an insurance violation?
That was, they were open without proving insurance to selectmen that you guys requested at that previous hearing.
Okay.
They had been opened for, I believe it was Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of that week following that meeting. Then the license suspension took effect. The license was reinstated on Sunday. They were open Sunday to Wednesday with that violation on that Monday and the Tuesday. Wednesday, I was working the day shift, and at the chief's request, I went down and asked her to shut down and come up here and prove insurance. They were closed down, I think, until the following Tuesday. So there have been other violations. I personally have not been involved in any of them, as far as people in the bar.
Are any of those other violations going to result in another hearing?
Depends on the board's action tonight.
Not that we can take that into account tonight, but going to you.
Well, I don't know how this board feels, but I'd certainly like to hear from the officers involved on the 15th and 16th, what the nature of the violations were at that time. Because that is subsequent to our hearing on April 3rd and subsequent to a long period of a suspended license. So I would like to hear what that violation was occurred, because I believe it has bearing on what my decision would be. I don't know how the rest of the board feels. Because the March 20th incident was prior to our April 3rd hearing, but as you pointed out, it was subsequent to our prior hearing.
I don't think for tonight's hearing that we can actually consider anything that's not been noticed, that we can only deal with what is in front of us tonight.
Okay.
And the history prior to that.
Okay.
But I think we can deal with 4 violations and the no insurance situation.
Well, but that's not subject to tonight.
But we did cover that at the last hearing.
But if you're talking about something, we can, tonight, we can only deal with what was in the notice to the applicant. We can't
Right.
deal with anything beyond that.
No, I understand. But on April 3rd, we dealt with the fact that there was no insurance coverage. And to me, that was a violation. So we have 4 violations that we've dealt with, that we have dealt with.
As a past, okay,
Yes,
thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, I have no further questions for the police or the applicant. The various, the provisions of our regulations about admission to the premises shall not lock the front door until the last patron is exited. Hours of operation. Those are the 2 items that I see are before us.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please?
So it's 1.03, admission to the premises, shall not lock the front door until the last patron is exited, and shall not allow any patron or any guest who's not working to enter the premises after the closing hour. 1.04, hours of operation shall be restricted to those set by the licensing authority set on the face of the license. No patron shall be on the premises before the official opening hours or after the official closing hours.
I also think there's a violation of 1.05. According to the officer's report, the area was completely dark except for the TV. And 1.05 says the premises shall be lighted in all public areas in a manner sufficient for the safety of the patrons and in a manner sufficient for the agents of the authority to make observations at the premises. The officer indicated in his report that he was not able to do that he actually had to use a flashlight. Now, 1.08 as well, environs of licensed premises. At all times, the public areas of the licensed premises must be continuously illuminated to the degree of not less than 1 foot candle measured 30 inches from the floor, except those portions of the room under furniture.
Is there any more questions of any of the?
So I would make a finding that,
Excuse me, am I going to be allowed to cross-examine the police officer and my client?
Sure. Would you like to do that now?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Officer,
You need to come to the microphone?
Yeah, just, you need to be at the microphone. Thank you.
Officer, you indicated in your police report that you needed to use your flashlight to read the number on the license of the people that were in the bar, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. But you were able to see them when you went in?
Yes.
Okay. And the owner indicated to you that people from the parking lot who were there as their rides were in there for safety concerns, correct?
That's what she told me, yes.
Okay. And you're aware that there was a bartender in Lunenburg who was followed home and she was murdered, correct?
That was probably about 25 years ago, yes.
And you're aware that there was a stabbing in the Donley's parking lot in Lunenburg right outside the bar some years ago?
I've been here 12 years, not that I can remember.
You don't recall that?
No.
Okay. And to my client, were there lights on that evening?
The bar lights were turned down, but, and the TV was on, and the cooler lights are still on.
And you were able to see the officer when you were in there?
Yes.
You were able to see everybody else in there?
Mm-hmm.
You were able to see everybody that was closing?
Yes.
Your bartender was still able to close the facility?
Yes.
And you were assisting him with that? And everybody that was in there was either employees or people who had come to give rides home, correct? And your boyfriend picked you up because you were going to the same place?
Because we were traveling to Shirley, yes.
Okay. And the officer never asked you that evening if you were drinking?
I don't recall if he asked me or not.
Okay. And nobody was let in the premises after closing, correct?
No.
And when your friend arrived, you went outside to see her, correct? Okay. Nothing further.
Thank you. Now consider the hearing closed and ask if there's any deliberation.
So the question becomes whether 1.03, based on the
Yeah.
last part of testimony, whether we don't have evidence that a person was admitted after the closing hours. However, 1.04, the hours of operations, no patron shall be on the premises after the closing hours. So it appears that 1.04A, hours of operation, would be the one that is, although 1.03, which is licensing shall not lock the front door of the premises until the last patron has exited the premises. So the door was locked and there were patrons in there. So I think it's 1.03, admission of the premises J, but not K. 1.04, hours of operation, we've just talked about staying in after hours. Physical premises lighted in a manner sufficient for the safety of all patrons and a manner sufficient for the agents of the authority to make observations at the premises without the need to identify themselves or seek assistance. And then 1.08, environs of the licensed premises ensure a high degree of supervision.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Before you vote, I would like to have the opportunity to address the board.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I would move that we make a finding that there was a violation of 1.03, admission of the premises J, licensees shall not lock the front door until the last patron is exited. Violation of 1.04A, hours of operation relating to patrons on the premises after the official closing hours. 1.05, physical premises not lighted in a manner sufficient. And 1.08, environs of licensed premises A, ensure a high degree of supervision. And F, that all areas illuminated to the degree not less than 1 foot candle.
And I would second that motion.
Thank you very much. I just want to address some of the issues here. I think that if you look at your bylaws certainly distinguish between patron, guest and customer. In this case, I think that the people that are in the bar have to be considered guests. They weren't patrons, they weren't customers, the rides that had come for them. There's absolutely no evidence before you that these people came in after hours, nor is there any evidence that they were drinking. The officer didn't testify that he saw anybody drinking alcohol in there. So if they weren't drinking alcohol, they were not patrons, and they were not customers, they were guests. And that is not a prohibition in your rules and regulations. There's also a regulation that these people, you can have people in there for safety's sake. I don't know that the officer doesn't know about it, but I certainly know about the stabbing that took place at Donnelly's, and I've read that police report. So you have that one, you have another one. There is a safety issue, and that establishment is right next door to her establishment. So while the officer says it's a well-lit parking lot, it really doesn't matter if it's a well-lit parking lot with cameras, because all that's going to do is help you find the perpetrator who might attack somebody. It certainly doesn't stop an attack from taking place. So if the bartender wanted to let in his girlfriend for her safety, and her boyfriend came in for his safety so he wasn't out in the parking lot alone, I don't think that's unreasonable. There's no suggestion that any of these people were drinking in there. With regards to the hours of operation, again, it's customers who have to be out on time. These were not customers. They were guests, and your regulations talk about guests and customers and patrons. Guests are not the same as customers, and that's who's prohibited from being in there under your regulations after closing hours. With regards to the locked door, again, all the customers have to be out, but the officer only talked about the side door. There's absolutely no evidence in front of you about whether the front door was locked or not. So I don't know how you could possibly make a finding that that's been violated. With regards to the lighting, there's been absolutely no talk here about one light candle. What does that mean? What exactly does that mean, and what does that translate into as far as lighting purposes go? I can tell you that I've looked a whole lot at exactly what it means, but typically the wording is 1 light foot per square foot. That's not in your regulations. It just simply says you have to have 1 light foot. And I believe that most towns require 5 light foots per square foot. So your regulation is incredibly low. So if the officer could go in and see the people, see the licenses, but needed a flashlight to read the numbers on the license, that's not odd. I would need that. I mean, probably anybody over the age of 30 who's reading a license and trying to read the little numbers would need additional lighting, but that's not what your requirements are. Your requirements are not that it be so well lit that he can read tiny numbers on a license. It's that it's minimal. And again, your standards are far below the common standards for lighting. So there's no evidence before you about exactly what that 1 foot means, but I'd suggest to you, if the officer could go in, he could see who they were, they could see who he was. He didn't have to say, I'm an officer. She's met her standard according to the rules that you have. She was there, and I'm, again, just going to suggest to you, there was no drinking going on. There was no suggestion that the officer saw any drinking. They were in there for safety. I think it's really reasonable that these people who come to pick them up aren't forced to wait out in the parking lot, as long as they're not drinking. They can't be in there drinking, but the officer never said that they were. So I'd suggest to you that she really hasn't violated the standards as you've written them. Perhaps you want to relook at the standards as you've written them, but the way they're written, she hasn't violated them, and I would just ask that you consider that. She can only go by what's written and what's before her. That's what everybody has to follow, and that's what she had to do. Thank you.
You have a motion that there are 4 violations, and it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 So now we can consider a penalty appropriate to the violation.
Just gonna say, all these sound like small things to anyone who's listening to this for the first time. But with the history of coming in here, what we mostly look for to someone who's coming in on a violation is that they've identified the problem and they're gonna come up with a solution to make sure it doesn't happen again. And if you cared about your business and cared about being professional, we wouldn't be splitting hairs on these things. It wouldn't be close. So a bunch of little things are a big thing.
And I would echo that to state that if there's a safety issue and other things like that, then people should be able to, perhaps the bar needs to close sooner or let people get out sooner. I think we have a continuing issue here on that.
I agree, and I think that we've heard in previous testimony that the officer has offered assistance in helping with the closing procedure, and I'm not sure I've heard the safety as an issue before this evening. I think that could have been brought to the officer's attention. Is there a recommendation for penalty?
The last suspension was for how many days? Is it 2 weeks? 2 business?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
The 8th to the 14th.
And that
And then-
has not yet served.
Right, the 6th, no, that one has served, it's the 6th to the 19th that hasn't served, correct?
Right.
And
The 8 to 4/14 has been
so
served.
that'd be ongoing right now.
Yes.
That was not appealed? So his suspension is incurred right now? Is that true?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
May
I
6th.
I just
till
didn't know whether
May
that.
19th.
I would make a motion, we impose a 3-week suspension. And when is the appeal period run out?
30 days.
30 days. So, to start June 10th, Sunday, June 10th?
I would second that. I just don't know at what point we keep suspending. I mean, I'm looking at a month of suspension, now we're looking at 3 weeks of suspension. At what point does the individual lose their entitlement to a liquor license?
I feel like the items we were dealing with last time with the previous 2-week suspension as far as the intoxication of people on premise is more serious than what we're dealing with now.
I would agree. And we did a 2-week suspension at that point, so perhaps a 3-week suspension right now is too stringent? Is that what you're...
To some, I viewed that as a major issue as far as the safety of the public. This is simply not following the rules as we've written them.
And I went for the 3 weeks because the first one was 3 days, and then we went for a longer period, the next violation, and then we went for a longer period at the next one.
It was 3 days, then a week, then 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I wasn't willing to go to double it again, because as you said, it wasn't as serious, but taking into consideration the prior violations, which we are allowed to do, but I wouldn't go to the full suspension because we didn't know about this hearing at the last hearing, but we technically could go for. And knowing that we may have another hearing at a future point, that's why I came up with a 3-week.
Sure. No, I mean, if that's what we want to do, that's what we want to do. I wouldn't go for the full suspension at this point.
Yeah.
Like, again, it sounds like we might have something else, another hearing to have in front of us. Might be making a different decision then, but
personally, I think 3 weeks right now, as Mr. McQuaid said. I think that these violations are much less severe than the last violation. And granted, we may have this board may have this matter before you again, and you may want to take a stronger line, but I think I would be more amenable to a 2-week suspension versus a 3-week at this point, given the violations that we've identified.
I could live with that. I don't know, what's your thought?
Yeah, I could as well.
So if the person who did my second, I'd be willing to change my motion to 2-week suspension, starting the same date, June 10th.
And I would second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. You will be notified.
Thank you.
Our next appointment is the liquor license change of manager and beneficial interest in B&H Corporation doing business as Mickey Shays. Is the license holder for Mickey Shays here?
Yeah. Remember, he can't hear.
Oh, that's right. So would you tell us who you are and your address?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Andrews Grafoni, and I live at 127 Kinsman Road, Fitchburg.
Okay,
Robert Herrick, owner of Mickey Shays.
great. And I believe you're here to do two things, to change the beneficial interest and to change the manager of record. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Would you tell us what's going on?
Well, Rebecca has been with me for 7 years. She, along with all the other bartenders, are tip certified, and I'm putting her forward as the new manager, and potentially, perhaps, maybe the new license holder down the road. But she's been with me for 7 years, and she's currently scheduled to work between 36, 38 hours a week.
Okay.
So,
And the other part of your application is you're removing one person from beneficial interest?
I'm having...
Sorry, so the other person, you're removing one person from the license of beneficial interest?
Not from the... Yes.
Okay.
And that is because of a sale or something?
I'm sorry, is it?
I'm just wondering why the beneficial ownership is changing.
My wife and I have become equal partners.
Okay, fine. Any questions?
I would make a motion that we approve the change of manager and the change of beneficial interest as submitted.
Second?
Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed?
Great.
Okay,
Thank you.
congratulations, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have an auto show request from the police chief.
Hi, Jim Marino, Police Chief. Yeah, I'm here to get your blessing again this year for the cruise night, which is scheduled for June 6th. It's a Wednesday night, 4 to 8, right here on Memorial Drive, and I'd like to shut down the road again like we did last year. And of course, I'd like to invite the board to have put out a table like you did last year. We're trying to do the same format as last year. Try to invite all the businesses in town to come up and set up a table, and that too with restaurants. We're planning on, we're going to attempt to have a lot more food this year. That was our one complaint last year, that there didn't seem to be enough food. So we're going to try to correct that this year. So it's June 6th, 4 to 8. The rain date's June 13th, so if it's raining out, of course, nobody will drive a classic car. So we're going to move it to the 13th.
And what day of the week is that, Joe?
That's a Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Midweek, yep.
And I think what you did, which not all of Memorial Drive is closed from Mass Ave to the Kids Kingdom, is still open for the residents there, I believe. It's just the Memorial Drive from,
Yeah, well, actually, what we did is, we posted an officer at the turn where Memorial Drive turns towards those two residences. We spoke to the owners of the homes there and just asked, got permission to do that and left an officer there in case they had to get in and out.
great.
We felt that was probably the best way to do that. And it was absolutely seamless. We had no issues at all because we wanted to leave it open all the way to the school. We actually had cars down past Kids Kingdom, closer to the Passio School.
You're going to open that
The
gate
gates.
again?
Yeah, I'd like to open the
okay.
gates so that, of course, we can use all the school parking as well, like we did last year.
I would make a motion that we approve the auto show request for Memorial Drive on Wednesday, June 6th.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Good luck.
Oh, thanks so much.
Great,
Appreciate
thank
it. Hope to see you there.
Alrighty, now we have a weekday Sunday entertainment license for the Lunenburg Arts Festival on June 9th, with a rain date of June 10th.
You guys want maps? These are not the final maps, that's just to give you a rough idea. Hi, Laura Brzozowski, 21 Francis Ave.
Mina Schulten, 3 Oak Ave.
Hi, back from the Lunenburg Cultural Council, and we are putting on the Lunenburg Arts Festival, and we're here for the Saturday entertainment license and to have you sign the Sunday in case of rain date state license. So it's Saturday, June 9th, behind the library along Memorial Ave in front of King's Kingdom, and then wrapping around in front of Passios.
It's going to be a hopping week in Lunenburg.
What's the time period?
It's, the festival runs from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. Setup begins around 8 a.m. And then hopefully cleanup will be done by 5 p.m.
And do you have access to restroom facilities?
Yes, the library is open until 2 p.m. and the Eagle House is actually very, very generously staying open so we can use their restrooms as well.
And have you met with the police chief?
Oh, yeah. And the fire chief, and yeah. Yeah, there's going to be resource officers.
Yeah, chief, can you just talk?
Yeah. And this event previously came before the board and was approved. This is just to add the entertainment licenses to the event.
Okay.
The rain date.
And the rain date, okay.
But I would say that Laura presented a great plan, and we are going to provide some police coverage and basically do the same thing, try to help the people in and out of Memorial Drive from those houses. And the same idea.
Okay.
I would make a motion to approve the entertainment license and the rain date of June 10th for this festival, for the Lunenburg Arts Festival. And I want to thank you for bringing it forward. I think it's going to be a great event.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're right.
Saturday, June 9th.
Where are we? Is it just here?
Yes, it's just the chairman.
Okay. You okay with me signing for us? Oh,
And that one's the
and this one's everybody. Alrighty, I have 2 town manager appointments, a beach coordinator, and lifeguards.
I'm asking for your ratification of my appointments for the beach coordinator, Genevieve Nass, and seasonal lifeguard positions for Cheryl Shaw, Catherine Kiefer, Elizabeth Simone, Lynn Major, and Ethan Gengler.
Make a motion, we ratify the town manager's appointments as read.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And the appointment for cultural council, we're going to postpone.
Okay.
But as I mentioned, we have several positions on the Cultural Council, so hopefully we'll have several appointments when we get back to that. Next item of business is the town manager report.
Shorter report this week than last week. So, just an update on the old gas station at 925. I forgot to mention when I went to the Economic Development Summit on May 1st, I spoke with a representative from Mass Development about that property. And I have coordinated a meeting between myself, and the land use director on May 17th. So we'll be discussing the potential for that property, any possible funding that would be used for cleanup through Mass Development and how they can assist the town. I had previously also reached out to MRPC back in last May and had a meeting with John Hume of MRPC and their consultant that was working with communities to submit applications to the EPA Brownfields grant for assessment. After some background research on the property, the consultant found that since the current owner, which is L&M Service Center, was the owner at the time the gas station was operating, that this property would not qualify. In addition, I have correspondence from a consultant hired by the town in 2013 that gasoline and oil impacts were identified in the soil and reported to Mass DEP in 2006, which is reflected on the state's Department of Energy and Environmental Affairs database with the link provided to the board. I'll update the board as to the outcome of our meeting on May 17th and with the next possible steps for this property. An ADA transition plan. Montechusett Regional Planning Commission will be offering assistance to communities in the MRPC region to bring about Americans with Disabilities Act transition plan compliance. The ADA transition plan would detail any structural changes that the town would need to undertake to achieve accessibility of public services and facilities for people with disabilities. So I have asked for that we would like to be included in that assistance. An update on the regional AC facility. Chief Marino, the Townsend Deputy Police Chief, and I met with Roy S. Brown Architects on Friday. The interview went well, and the reference checks came back with good reviews. A notice of award and notice to proceed with the work will be issued this week, and the feasibility study will begin forthwith.
And just AC stands for Animal Control.
Animal Control, sorry for the abbreviation. So dispatch union negotiations. As a member of the administration board for Neshoba Valley Regional Dispatch District, I was chosen to be part of the negotiation team to negotiate the next dispatch collective bargaining agreement. There was a session today, and there will be another held on May 17th. I will be attending a ADA coordinator meeting in Boston on Monday through the Massachusetts Office on Disability. We have another DPW union negotiation session on May 16th. And I've also, Selectman Ebersol and I are on the Superintendent Screening Committee, and we have a series of meetings now until May 16th, I believe. So that's the last date. That's all I have for tonight.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the town manager's report? All righty. Our first item of current business, last week we announced that the Attorney General's office made a decision of an open meeting law violation against the Board of Selectmen based on our November 9th, 17 meeting. We got that notification after our agenda for last week was posted, so it is on tonight's agenda to allow us to discuss that. Is there any?
I don't have any discussion, but there was a requirement for us to view several trainings and certify that we had done that, and I just want to pass that to the town manager.
I believe that completes all of them.
Yes. All the board members have submitted certifications now.
And I'd just like to note that while town meeting is slightly different than the budget hearing, we did implement kind of our new process by deliberating and voting publicly as part of the town meeting, and our intention is to deliberate and/or vote publicly at any joint meeting that we attend.
And I think the other part was that the agenda item needs to be a little clearer, which we've changed now. When we talk about possible votes, we actually say possible votes so that it's clear what may actually happen.
Is there any other discussion or action items? Okay. And our other current business for this evening is to go through the board and town manager's goals and performance against those goals. I call your attention just to give us a kind of a roadmap, if you will. The town manager's goals and status updates are in your package. The first three match ours, and then the final two are additional goals for the town manager. My recommendation is that we take them one at a time, discuss our opinions and responses to the Board of Selectmen goals. Hear the town manager talk about her achievements against them, and I do have some written materials from Mrs. Luck that I'll read into the record as I can as we go through each of them. So the first goal was to increase public outreach and improve public relations.
Which goals are we looking at? The town?
Well, the first three are
Similar, yeah.
similar, right?
Similar.
So ours is, if you change the order, it's improve public satisfaction through community involvement and public outreach.
Okay. Because I think they are a little bit different. I think we were much more specific in the town manager goals. So I guess I'm asking whether you want to talk about our progress or the town manager's progress.
Well, ultimately, we want to talk about both, and my
Okay.
suggestion was to talk about both by goal,
Okay.
as opposed to go all town manager and then all BOS or vice versa. I was
Okay.
going to say, let's talk about the first goal around public outreach, and maybe we'll start with the Board of Selectmen and then follow up with the town manager, unless you'd rather do it the opposite way.
Doesn't matter. I just have two different sheets. I wouldn't
Right.
know which sheet I'm talking about.
Fine.
I don't know, if Mr. Chair, if you want to tackle it first, or?
Okay, I mean, I guess let's do the,
You want me to start and go
Sure.
through? Okay.
Sure.
All right.
once we get started, we'll get a
Yes.
flow for this.
Okay. So the objective was to increase access to current information and solicit input from citizens on topics that are important to the town, residents, and its businesses. And the action was the town manager will use the community compact best practice implementation of a citizen engagement co-creation plan to improve public participation through the website. So the IT director, as I've been reporting, and I have been working with the company chosen, QSend, from earlier this fiscal year until now, and the site is expected to launch in a few weeks. The new site will allow for e-notifications, we'll have our Facebook feed on the homepage, and ways to get connected to what's happening in town government. And we tried to connect this so we could project it onto the projector, but it's not able to. So if you click the link, it will actually open up the test page for the home page. And I can put this on Facebook this week so people can actually see more of a visual. But this is the, and don't pay too much attention to the pictures because they're going to change. They were just put in by the design company. So this is the general format. This the interactive buttons for Facebook, YouTube, to watch town videos, Twitter, and mail. And the headings are government, residents, business, community, and how do I, like a search. One thing I've been talking about a lot is having a business section and making sure we have a lot of information on there about our businesses in town. So that's where that would be. But it would also include such things as how do you apply for permits and permitting. The picture will be a slideshow type presentation with pictures. So we could replace, right now it has Kazoo Playground opens. This could be pictures of Wallace Park and other nice scenes around Lunenburg. I'm still soliciting for anyone listening pictures, but they do have to be a certain size. Someone kindly did send a picture, but it was not the size that we're able to use on the website. It was a beautiful picture of the lake in the fall, but we'll try to use that on Facebook instead that season. The buttons include below our minutes and agendas, charter and town bylaws, online services, important documents, and Get Connected. And with a focus on Get Connected, that's what one of the main goals of improving the website is. The online services will also be another avenue to connect to people for permits. That's where a link will be for our new upcoming permitting software. And
Is that where you would go to pay taxes and things like that
yes,
too?
paid taxes. And below that are icons for the latest news and announcements, and they can be replaced with pictures of whatever that announcement may be. And if you keep scrolling down, it has all the upcoming events, and they can be categorized by whether it's a town event, a community event, or other type of event. And the Facebook feed is on the right-hand side. And that would be with the most recent Facebook post. Also is visit our parks and rec facilities, but this also will have, you can click on, it will have the ability to click on business, and it will populate with businesses, or you click on municipal buildings, it will have the locations of the municipal businesses. But one of the main reasons I thought having, we've talked a lot about having a map that shows where all our trails are and parks, and I think that would be an attribute for people to see. So that's just a highlight, and more to come on the website.
I think it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
It's much more user-friendly, much more interactive. Really like it.
It's a big improvement from what we currently are using, I think. I'm excited for it to launch.
Absolutely. Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
My thought on this goal, because my understanding is we're supposed to comment with either completed, substantive progress, or no progress.
Right.
And I rated this as completed. There's always going to be an ongoing goal and improvements, and as the town manager talked about, this hasn't launched yet, and as it launches, there will be changes, and as technology evolves, platforms will change. But I feel that the town manager has done an excellent job of improving public outreach and public relations. A number of measures have been implemented to solicit input from citizens on various topics, including surveys, charrettes, and public meetings. The improved website is going online in very near future, and as we just talked about, I think it's excellent. The Facebook page the numbers are growing. The fact that various individual departments have Facebook pages and are getting a lot of citizen involvement is terrific. I think that Heather has schedule a number of meetings to interact with local businesses and citizens, and is constantly seeking feedback on a variety of issues. And I think that she has done a great job of moving this goal forward. As I said, it will always be ongoing, but I think she has completed it as far as what we asked her to do.
Any other input on the town manager for goal 1?
Do you want me to, I hate to prolong it, but.
Well, I think that for fluency, I think it makes sense for all of us to talk about one goal at a time.
Exactly. Yeah.
She's got a few
But I
more
had other
things on
action
that
items.
goal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
related to that goal.
Okay.
Another one of the action items was to implement other interactive platforms that will seek input from citizens on current issues and create two-way communications. And to build on what Selectman Bertram said, is we also used the use of surveys to create dialogue and get input from citizens on economic development, the color of paint of Town Hall, project areas that would benefit by greater accessibility and increased safety, the complete streets. So we use SurveyMonkey as that tool to get a broader group of people in addition to the traditional methods that we use. And these were shared through Facebook, the website, and the newspaper. And the, like you mentioned, the public forums were used as another means for gaining input and soliciting information from residents and businesses. I can read the whole dialogue if you want.
Yeah.
Okay. So the public forums on town facilities and complete streets, those are examples. Meetings were held with the business community in October, November, December, February, and March, and these sought their input on ways the town can promote the local economy and our business owners. Based on these meetings held in October and November, a report was issued with a number of recommendations from our Regional Planning Commission, two of which we have secured another round of district local technical assistance in order to implement: the brochure to promote local businesses and the permanent guidebook. The creation of an economic development committee was another recommendation, and a charge for the EDC is in the process of being developed. And the last action item for that goal was the town manager will create a Facebook page to provide information to the public. The Facebook page was launched in January and has been a successful means of providing information to the public, including upcoming town events, updates about trash pickup, emergency information such as fires, and I've received a number of messages through Facebook that have prompted a public post on information requested or responded directly to the resident if it only affected them. I set up the DPW Facebook page, which is administered now by the DPW director and the DPW administrative assistant. This has also been well received and will be an effective means for the DPW director to communicate about the condition of roads, road projects, and other related public works information. That's all I have.
So, I'll follow up that I was almost complete. I was at substantive because I'm just waiting for that website to be up there. Then it just automatically turns to complete. The fact that they were organizing outreach events where your way of doing it is that you're not controlling it, you're allowing the process to work. I think that's a good way of allowing people to feel that they can communicate without being questioned based on their opinions. So I rank you very high for that part. So I think, as Mrs. Bertram talked about, we always have to keep communicating. The different systems will be going, but great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, obviously, it's an ongoing thing, and there's always so many people who don't care to be involved to begin with, but you put the information out there to get it if they want to get it. And I think if someone wants to be involved, they certainly have the avenues to get the information and be involved, be informed anyway. And if you look back 5 and 10 years ago, and this is light years better than it was back then. So it's complete or substantially complete, barring the website going live. But yeah.
Input from Mrs. Luck. Substantive progress. The town manager has set up a town Facebook page. Other departments are setting up Facebook pages as well. Hopefully residents will begin to use these pages to obtain information about town resources. I applaud the town manager's directive that all town departments post information on the town Facebook pages and websites only. I know many citizens are actively involved Facebook participants. However, a significant number of Lunenburg residents are left out of this information stream. So methods of outreach to those not on Facebook are needed. I'm also concerned that too many town resources may be spent on town Facebook pages. There's a lot of important matters on the town manager's plate, and I question that she has the time to deal with managing Facebook too. The town manager has worked with IT to set up a new town website, although that remains in the works. From my point of view, I would agree that we're all but the website pretty much is where we're at. I think the significant additions, I won't repeat what everybody else said, was the effort to get citizen input both from residents and businesses, and to work on community best practices through the design of the website. Just in shifting gears to our goals.
Before you do that.
Sure.
I just, based on what Heather's comment was, that I encourage anybody who wants to make a comment that wants to have a response quickly, or if it's an emergency, please don't use Facebook. Please call the town manager's office or DPW or the police department, because Facebook, while we will have a regular involvement, there may not be an emergency response on that. So if there's a broken water main or injured animal, contact the police department immediately and call 911.
And I also think that, just to close the loop, if we get inquiries that are of a nature that it's of importance to the whole town, we'll then proactively go out through Facebook or the website to provide the answer, but it's probably not the vehicle to get the original answer. Right. I just wanted to say that when we look at our Board of Selectmen goals on that same topic, we had originally talked about the town web page update, the town Facebook update, department Facebook updates, a social media policy for town departments, the move to workshops that we're doing once a month, and community input, charrettes sharing, et cetera. I think we're now at a stage where we need to do some plan sharing or do more plan sharing as a result of some of that work. And I can see that while it's all work in progress, I think the town manager's contributed to all of those activities and objectives.
And when I look at how ours is described, community involvement and public outreach is something that is a task, but improve public satisfaction. I think we need to develop a method by which we can actually measure public satisfaction, whether it's, there are various survey processes out there where people on a regular basis can provide feedback of whether they're satisfied or not. And that's going to vary based on the subject matter, and people may not agree with our positions, but the focus is dealing with community involvement and outreach, and we're going to stumble when we try to do some things and not other things. So I think that we need to have a regular and ongoing way to gather public input regarding satisfaction.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah, there may be a way to get, as far as surveys like that go, in my own experience, you'll get many more responses from people who were dissatisfied than somebody who had a good experience and going to take part in that. So that's a good way to get criticism. I'm not sure it's a great metric to say, oh, good ones compared to bad ones, we're doing okay or not.
So our measure will be getting fewer negative ones.
Right. Or less bad negative ones.
That's right, less bad.
And I've participated in several surveys during my professional life, and in a lot of ways it's important. It's very important once you get to the third or fourth cycle, because then you're measuring a trend line as opposed to a number or a response. But it's important to start, so that you can do that.
I just want to comment, I think that we've made progress on this goal, and I think the town manager has been extremely instrumental in that. I do think that there's a number of issues facing the town, that the charrette workshop type environment, I think, is key to getting public involvement, and I hope that the board continues those. And I'd like to see, given the number of issues that we're talking about, the town facilities, economic development, ecotourism, agritourism, I'd like to see more of those on a much more regular basis, because I think that's the way we can engage the community, and I'd like to see more publication of that well in advance. I think the notice was a little bit short on many of the charrettes that we had, so I'd like to see more public outreach and more charrettes. You know, it came up again at town meeting, is what is the plan? And I think we need to move that forward, and I think the board can do that hopefully can engage the public to help with that.
We might want to do what we've done with our workshop schedules, of actually just say, all right, during the year, we're going to do 3 charrettes. We don't know what they're going to be yet, but here are the dates. So you just have them as hold the place. We can work around them. You can always cancel them if you need to, but at least you've got the dates there.
I think that's a great idea. I think that and if people know in advance, they can plan on it. And then as you get closer to the date, if it's a topic that interests people, because while I really appreciate all those that came, I'd love to see the charrettes be bigger. And I think that's possible. I think there is interest in the town. The fact that we had that quorum and well over a quorum, and we maintained it throughout the town meeting, people are starting to engage. And I think that we need to capture that and capture that interest. And by publicizing dates and having a regular schedule, I think that would work great.
And we had the one that was done at the senior center. So is that a different time than an evening or maybe a Saturday? So we need to think about what's the groups we're trying to get involved and how do we actually reach out to them where they are.
Exactly.
Right. All good input. Move on to the second one? I think that works, so why don't you lead us off?
Okay. So the second goal was to create a comprehensive infrastructure plan. And the action for that was the town manager will develop an inventory of all town assets, including town buildings, school buildings, town-owned land, recreation areas, equipment, and vehicles. And this one is in process. I put together a rudimentary inventory of assets, which is in your Google Drive. It's titled Inventory of Assets. So it includes all the vehicles the town has by department, year, and those are the costs assigned, and those come from the insurance company. So that's where that information is and can be updated as we see fit. There's also a page that lists all the town buildings, various sewer pump stations, parks, gazebo, veterans park, and that will eventually include the more information: year it was built, acquired, replacement cost, anticipated fiscal year replacement if there's a major renovation, and the last major improvement to that facility, and whether it's in fair, good, or excellent condition. And the last page is, this is just a snapshot of IT equipment and inventory, and it's actually much longer than that, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what's put together so far, and this is, like I said, very rudimentary. It's very start of the process.
Yeah, it's a daunting amount of information to try to compile in one place and quantify. So the progress you've made, I think, is great, and look forward to next year's capital planning process, getting to use some of that to, you know, I think this year we did a lot with public safety. Next year we're going to have to focus on our buildings a little bit. So having that information is going to be key.
The second action item related to that was the town manager will develop a building and infrastructure maintenance plan that will include repair and maintenance of town buildings, school buildings, land, recreation areas, roads, and underground infrastructure. A daunting task. So just to put some notes on this one and the progress that I think has been made on this goal is there's been, I think, a significant amount of process in the last year and a half. And when I came on in March of 2017, I received an indoor air quality report for the town hall that had a number of recommendations that include mold remediation, containment of future moisture issues in the basement, cleaning of bird waste in the attic, removal and cleaning of records in the basement and attic, and cleaning of the HVAC system. Funding was requested and approved at the November 2017 special town meeting to perform 7 property condition assessments that address the lack of a long-term plan. And the firm hired completed these assessments and presented their findings in February of 2018. The reports outlined immediate repairs and extended building maintenance schedule with associated costs, information that the town previously did not have at its disposal, and related to the town hall. So all that work was accomplished. And I want to thank specifically the DPW and the DPW director for heading that project. Let me move on. The last action item related to that is the town manager will address infrastructure needs through recommendations to fund capital projects and recommend a budget that will address annual maintenance of facilities. The cost estimates in the property condition assessments were integrated into the capital plan and still require a review by all the appropriate officials, capital planning, finance committee, and myself. The expectation is that this information will be updated as smaller projects are completed using the town facilities funding, and larger projects will be prioritized during the capital planning process in fiscal 19. Fiscal 19 the approved budget included an additional $40,000 in the facilities account to address deferred maintenance projects. Infrastructure needs were also addressed through the fiscal 19 capital plan, including $65,000 to address the DPW roof, asbestos abatement at Turkey Hill, and demolition of a modular classroom at the Passios building. In March, we applied for the next round of Green Communities funding to address energy efficiency projects at the Town Hall, Ritter Building, Turkey Hill, and the Public Safety Building, that if awarded, will defer spending taxpayer dollars on needed improvements that will ultimately have energy savings that will reduce the operation costs for those buildings.
Any board input to the town manager assessment?
No, I just think, as the town manager outlined, substantive progress has been made. I've been impressed with the data that's been compiled to date and the actions that the town manager has taken to address some of the issues. And I'm very confident that she's going to continue to move these projects forward based on the information that's been compiled and develop a comprehensive plan. So I just think she's done a great job.
I'll echo the Vertex report, the workshops. I have substantive progress on this as well. Similar to the platforms, I'm not sure when we'll ever be done with buildings, because when you're done taking care of these 5 and the other 2, we'll be back again doing like the Golden Gate Bridge. So, but the fact is that that's not something the town has done in the past. They waited until we had to replace the building, and that's not the way to deal with maintenance.
Anything to add?
No,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay, Mrs. Luck writes, little progress. We collectively have spent a great deal of time discussing town buildings and their future use. I applaud the goal of creating an infrastructure plan as outlined above, but have seen no evidence of such. I would disagree. I think that we've had quite a bit of activity. I think the task becomes, the reason I would have it as progress as opposed to complete is because it's never really complete. And I think that the difficult task is going to be to combine facilities, infrastructure, buildings, roads, recreation areas into the capital plan, as opposed to, I think traditionally, if we've dealt with them at all, we've dealt with them individually as individual items.
Yeah, and I mean, Bob kind of nailed it on the head. We've usually waited for something to fall apart and then we build a new one or replace it completely. So trying to address these things, and keep old things running is kind of a new concept for us, and we're trying to do our best at it.
And unfortunately, in municipal government, the standard by which you build a building is you try to build a building so you know that you're not going to maintain it. And that really shouldn't be how we should operate.
Right.
That's why you have masonry buildings as opposed to sheetrock. Now, some of that makes sense, especially in a school, because you don't want to have people breaking through the walls and other things like that. But I think when you talk about the parks and conservation, and I think the capital planning process used to be equipment-focused.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy the fact that it's expanding to do the entire infrastructure property of the town.
And just to transition that to the Board of Selectmen goal, I think that our original goal talked about the pavement management plan, which was kind of last year's goal that went into the buildings, parks, town property expansions, and then the whole Vertex information and building it into the actual capital plan where we can deal with it on some sort of schedule.
On that, I truly believe that this board, along with some other boards, really has to come up with one or two conceptual plans and then seek community feedback. I think we keep talking about it, but I don't feel like we're making a lot of progress. I think that we need to determine, what is option A, B, C, or A and B, and look for community feedback and try to move something forward. I think we're kind of stalled. And then once we have a plan, I think we can identify potential funding sources, including in grants, the capital plan, et cetera. But first, we have to agree on a plan. And I think this board has to drive that. And I hope that happens. As far as the pavement management plan, we've made great strides in improving our roadways. And although we have received funding from the Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP, for Summer Street and Chase Road, I've tried to say this over and over again, there are numerous funding opportunities that exist for our many other roads in Lunenburg that are federal aid eligible. We have over 25 roads in Lunenburg that are federal aid eligible, and other communities take advantage of them all the time for reconstruction and associated repaving, and we're not doing that. Granted, we have the debt exclusion and we have Chapter 90 money, but I believe we're missing funding opportunities. And it's simply a matter of submitting a project need form. We don't need to engage engineers. We don't need to spend a lot of money. We need to fill out a project need form and determine whether or not Mass DOT is interested in moving that project forward. And if they are, I think we can then reallocate that money to other more important things. I truly believe Lunenburg is missing a lot of funding opportunities. And frankly, the assistance of the DPW department is needed to facilitate that. There is a map of all federal aid eligible roads on the MRPC website through the Mr. Mapper application, and we can take a look at that. The other issue is, I think that if we could engage with Montechusett Regional Planning Trail Coalition, there is also funding available through the TIP program for trails, and other communities have taken advantage of that. They've done handicapped improvements. They've done, currently Fitchburg and Leominster are receiving $11 million for a rail trail. Other communities are taking advantage of these opportunities, but we have to engage. So the Conservation Commission, the DPW have to get involved and have to start moving these projects forward. But there is funding opportunities. There's also brochures, the Montechusett Regional Trail Coalition, they meet on Tuesday mornings and Tuesday evenings, and they are putting together brochures and maps for regionals as well as business advancement. And it's a community effort that I think that we would do well to get engaged in, and those departments need to engage.
I know that I worked with, when we were doing our goal last year, I worked with Jack to identify, and he has the inventory of which ones are federally qualified and which ones need work, so I know that is in process, so. But that's the first time I heard of the rail trail funding as part of the TIP program.
Mm-hmm.
So that we need to, that's the whole concept of expanding the capital plan, that then means that we're going to have more people working on different components of it.
Right, because for congestion mitigation, under the TIP program, there's a whole move away from, fossil fuel-based, and so they are looking for trails and for multimodal opportunities, and so that's how they've been able to tie in the Trails Coalition funding along with trail improvements through congestion mitigation funds. So there are opportunities there, that if we could get the conservation or open space engaged in, I think that we could do really well.
Great.
Can we move on to the third goal?
Okay. The third goal was to facilitate business and economic development. The first action item was to work with the business community to promote existing and attract new businesses and improve their opportunity for successful operations in the community. This process will include charrettes that will look at the type of economic development that is most desired for the town of Lunenburg. And my comment as to the progress that's been made on this is we've completed round one of promoting the local economy through the DLTA grant that provided technical assistance from our regional planning agency in December 2017. The town manager will continue holding sessions with the business community to find ways we can partner with our local businesses and help them grow, which was addressed under Goal 1, Action 2. The second action item under that goal was the town manager will use the information technology grant to implement permitting software that will make it easier for residents and businesses to go through the permitting process in Lunenburg. The internal e-permitting software is going live this week and will be live externally by the beginning of June. Also, the district local technical assistance the town will receive from Montechusett Regional Planning Commission staff will be used for a permitting guidebook that will provide a guide to the permitting process and make it easier for applicants.
So the question I have, the meeting that we had with the Planning Board and the Agricultural Committee, was that your doing, or is that a Board of Selectmen goal? Was that the action? Was that combination of both?
Combination.
All right, so,
Yeah.
because that's not mentioned here, because that
Yes.
was another item of looking at agriculture as economic development.
Yes.
And I marked this as substantive progress on your part of reaching out, and the success factor for me is when some business people themselves are starting to take the lead on some of this thing, so the town manager doesn't have to do everything. And it gets to be more sustainable if the business community is able to do it.
It's been exciting to see the progress of those meetings. So, I mean, it has just begun as a small group, but I think that's how it starts as it grows and becomes more successful. And they've talked about forming a business association with a neighboring town like Townsend, who has a well-established business association, and how they can join efforts in promoting a region as well. I think it's exciting to see and hear the ideas of the business owners.
I marked this as substantive progress as well, for all the reasons that Heather talked about. I think that, we're continuing, and I'm thrilled with the business relationships that have been made to date. And I think a lot of progress is made. I do think that the board could assist this goal by appointing an economic development committee, which is something Heather talked about. And I think partnering, with members of various boards, and we've talked about that. I think that would be an asset to move this forward. And I do think, as I said earlier with one of the other goals, is I think that we need to continue the charrettes and workshops and try to engage more aspects of the community.
Yeah, I mean, the strong suit of this one is, again, getting the business people to start taking some lead on their own and getting them involved in that manner, so we're not, can lead a horse to water, we can't make it drink it. So this is one of those places where there is substantial progress of, the community taking that and running with it to some degree. So I applaud you on that.
Mrs. Luck writes, substantive progress. There have been outreach and charrettes. However, it still remains to be seen if the community wants economic development. The charrettes held were attended by a small group, which was substantially the same for each charrette, and while some ideas were put forward, others were ignored. It would be a reach to state anything conclusive resulted from these meetings. I see from the town manager's point of view that kind of two tracks. One is I believe that in achievement of this goal or making substantive progress towards this goal, she attacked both the business groups in terms of what what environment and/or need to be filled is appropriate to people who want to do business in town, and from the citizen point of view, from what do our citizens want in terms of a business or a service or something in town. To translate to the Board of Selectmen, I think that our task is, that came out of that joint workshop that Mr. Ebersol referred to, is to develop a next step, which is most likely a task force, or whether it's business development or economic development task force. And I think the agreement was that it would at least begin with an agricultural focus and build from there. But it would be a broad group, but just, ask them to start on that focus. That's what I heard.
Well, I would say agriculture and ecotourism, I think they're kind of combined.
Yeah, it's, again, it's good to seek out what people would like to see in town for businesses, but we can't make a business come here, and people saying they want a business here isn't going to make a business be here. You have to find the people willing to open and run that business and keep it going. So, I mean, if you really want some, now we know what people kind of want, but to actually make it happen, it's working with that business community to get somebody to do it.
I think I would agree with that. However, I think there are other aspects. I think that, in the economic development seminars that I've gone to, one of the biggest things is that the community has to market itself. Right. And I think that, if site facilitators for businesses are looking for specific sites, there were several that spoke, and they said the first thing we do is we look at a community's webpage and see if they're receptive and see what kind of, businesses they're looking for, and if their permitting process is too difficult or they don't have, they're not geared toward this type of business, then they're off our list and we go on to the next one. So I think that our improvements on the website are great, and I think that we can continue to do that. And I think once we get to a point where we do identify whether it's agriculture or ecotourism or whatever types of businesses we want to promote, I think we do have the ability to do that. And I think we have the ability to put, even assist vacant facilities with, all the time when I worked for the Board of Health, we would get notices that this business is seeking a 20,000 square foot facility. We need to start looking at those and responding to those. Mm-hmm. So I do think there are things that, as a community, that we can do.
Right. I'm not saying they're not. It's just tough to go from a public charrette to say, okay, we think all these things should be here, and then to make that happen. It's a long everything
process.
You just said is a way to make that happen, but it's
right.
You can't expect a result in a year from starting with the charrette.
Well, the other thing is the planning board has been doing work to revamp the zoning bylaws, and one of the things that, one of their stated goals is what are the things that can be actually provided as a matter of right instead of by special permit. So they're still identifying which things are appropriate for a special permit and which things people should be able to do on their own. So, but I think that goes into switching over to the Board of Selectmen goals. About ours was not to do economic development, it was to identify the desire for and type of economic development. And I think that will be a continuing discussion. I would say we've made slightly less than substantive process on that, because similar to the discussion on the buildings, I don't think we have consensus in the town of who wants what, where. Mm-hmm. The additional taxes to support the growth that the town will need for the public safety and other areas of town is important, but how many big box stores do we want? How many? We certainly don't want heavy industry here. We have lots of wetlands and other things like that. We have a limited sewer system that we're not looking to expand too much. But at the same time, there is sewer on Summer Street, and with I'm hopeful that the revitalization of that street is going to encourage people to want to locate there. Because right now, people are avoiding that street because it's just so dangerous. But I think we need to, I think we've identified that there is desire for agricultural, ecotourism, other things like that. I think there's a general support for economic development, but I don't think there's an overwhelming, we're going to do it. But I think as Heather was talking about, the charge of the Economic Development Committee will be the important part for us to be able to guide where we're
Right.
going to go forward. And I think that'll be an important tool on that.
Exactly. So that's the three that are co-goals between the Board of Selectmen and the town manager. And I think just before we go on with the two that are pretty much town manager goals in support of the town, the next step is for us to work this into next year's goals. I think that I would like to have a substantial workshop and some progress towards developing next year's goals by July, so that we can actually have them for the whole year and begin to work on them. And unfortunately, we'll be saying goodbye to Mrs. Bertram, but we'll have a new member of the board to join in with us and help us set those goals.
And we may have a member of the Economic Development Committee or Task Force.
I hope so.
All right, so let's move on to number 4 and 5 on the town manager's list.
Okay, Goal 4 was create long-term plan for tax title and foreclosure. The objective was to improve the town's financial stability and ensure that the amount of outstanding taxes on properties does not exceed valuations and maintain a stable cash flow. The first action on that was the town manager will work with the financial officers to develop a policy on a tax title and foreclosure process. And there is in your Google Drive a draft tax title policy and procedure. And it's a first go at it, so just be kind. And and that can be discussed at a future meeting. I didn't mean to get into the nuances of that. The second action item was the town manager will review all ongoing tax title properties with the financial officers and recommend a budget that will support the foreclosure process. And I reported at the May 1st board meeting that the town treasurer collector is working with the tax title attorney to hold a tax title assignment auction by the beginning of the new fiscal year. In just the last 2 months, a total of $104,934 has been received on tax title properties. Also, the number of tax title properties has reduced from 34 to 29 properties. Comparing the total of what has been collected for the same 9-month period in fiscal 18 versus fiscal 17, $231,260 more has been collected in tax title receivables in fiscal 18 than the previous year. The treasurer collector has also advanced the properties the board wished to proceed with the foreclosure process. Additional funding for moving tax title properties into foreclosure was included in the budget based upon the recommendation of the treasurer collector and the estimated number of parcels that could be moved through the foreclosure process next fiscal year.
And I had down substantive progress on this. I'm glad there's a draft policy. Also, the fact that we had the meeting where we actually went through the list of the properties was an important part for us to actually look what was there. And the fact that you then reached out to the Park Department, the DPW, Conservation to see which ones they may be interested in. We probably need to have some article ready for either fall or springtime meeting if there's a foreclosure and we want to turn that over to Conservation or to Parks or whatever the various things that we thought that we needed to do.
I would agree that there's been progress. Now with the policy, I would agree with substantive, but before that, I wasn't. So there might be a need to put something in between no progress and substantive progress.
Right.
But I do think that we've made progress, and I'm very happy that we're moving forward and starting the foreclosure process with the end result of either getting them back on the tax rolls or into conservation. And I'm very pleased with the inclusion for additional funding next year to keep moving forward. I think it's important, and I think having that policy in place will be critical, so that way it'll be very standard as to what criteria and how the process needs to go forward.
And the other part, when I used to be the tax collector and treasurer, having succeeded my predecessor who was there for 30 years, which was the philosophy is that the town should be paid first. Mm-hmm. If you're going to not pay something or not pay something else, we should be the one that was paid. That then avoids the tax title process in the first place.
Yeah, I don't have the same history with this particular objective as you guys do. Haven't been on the board longer, but as far as the year I've been here, it seems clearly like there's been progress. And, I mean, it's tough to say. I'd say substantial progress. I'm thinking myself about how we've been rating these things. It's tough to say anything's complete because there's always more work to do. So.
Right, I agree. Input from Mrs. Luck, it says some visible progress. Treasurer tax collector has come before the Board of Selectmen to discuss moving some properties back onto the tax rolls, and I applaud that ongoing effort. I have not seen a policy on tax title and foreclosure. Well, we just talked about that tonight. Nor do I recall one being discussed in the town manager report. Also, there are other more global areas of budget and finance that the town manager needs to work on to ensure that the needs of the citizens are being met. This chosen goal is more of a goal for the financial officers under the town manager to undertake with her input, of course. I would say that this is something we specifically asked to get accomplished, and although I don't want to get down to the level of detail to talk to the town manager about how to approach it, I think when you see things like an increase in the amount collected and a question about how much we should be budgeting going forward, I would encourage a relationship between, you know, as your returns grow, you invest more in that until you get to a point where you're at a maintenance level. Mm-hmm. So that, you know, I think it makes sense, even if it's an increase in the budget, if it's an increase for a higher return, it's worth noting as an exception and planning for that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what started this conversation in the first place. I think we were very limited in the amount we invested in trying to chase this, mm-hmm. and we concentrated on it for the first time in the last 2 fiscal years.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The last goal was to advance human resource management, and the objective was to streamline processes and procedures for employees and newly appointed committee and board members. The first action was to complete a comprehensive update of personnel policies and procedures, and I listed the policies that were adopted or updated in the past year, which include the standards of conduct policy, conflict of interest, financial disclosure, family and medical leave, parental leave, domestic violence leave, sexual harassment, protected class harassment, workplace violence, drug and alcohol for CDL employees, social media, use of information technology resources, and the pregnant workers fairness policy. The second action item on that goal was to create an employee handbook with all employee-related policies in one place and given to all employees. This is in process. The updating of the personnel policies that I have mentioned was the first step in the process. So it's just a administrative task to compile everything together. There's some other information that should go into a handbook like that. The third action was to create and implement performance evaluations for department heads. The forms have been created for management and non-management performance evaluations that are currently being reviewed by department heads. And the fourth action was to create an onboarding process for all newly appointed officials and a handbook for all committees and boards. And I received a variety of sample handbooks from other communities that I'm reviewing, and the topics that would be covered in these handbooks would include open meeting law, public records law, conflict of interest, code of conduct, use of town equipment, the appointment process, reappointment, filling of vacancies, resignation, among other topics.
The other thing that we talked about was giving those officials support in how to take minutes and how to run a meeting. Because there's some people that have never run a meeting before, and minutes is an art and a science. Some of that is a bigger discussion, but I think those are the things I think we heard during the outreach with the department heads.
And I might add to that too, just from past personal experience on various boards, reminding new board members and sometimes existing ones what the actual charge of their charge and responsibility of the committee is, because some don't do everything they're supposed to be doing, and some do more than they're supposed to be doing, and that can be somewhat problematic, too.
It's interesting that the handbooks that I've received so far, they vary, but one of them had every charge listed for every committee and the composition, their term limits, and so I thought that was interesting for them.
It was good the last week when we, was the last week or the week before, when we changed the number of people on the Stormwater Task Force, that the charge was in there again, which was really good to review that again. So the Green Communities Task Force, which they've talked about wanting to become a committee, would be another one that it's always good to look at that. But I think that, what's our charge? We sort of, even though it's statutory, and this is for appointed officials, but I think that I like that idea of the charge.
Input from Mrs. Luck, it says, little progress. As far as I know, there is no employee handbook at this time, nor am I aware of progress towards the same. When I look at this personnel goal, it seems as a clerk, it seems a clerical task or one to be outsourced. The town manager's number one responsibility, in my view, is to manage personnel and to ensure that all personnel are doing the jobs they are being paid to do. As I have stated previously, the town is in a very good place personnel-wise in many cases and is led by many officials who are deeply committed to our town. I look at the handbook as a kind of a maintenance factor. I mean, you have to have one and it should be a good one, but I don't see it as an aspirational goal. It's just something that should be there. And as well as a performance management plan. I think some hard work to get a performance management plan accepted by the various collective bargaining groups is being done and has been done. But I think the task going forward is to actually use it as a goal-setting tool and a feedback tool and a way to get an agreement on what the important tasks are to be. I would encourage the town manager to work on a staffing succession plan, not just a replacement type plan, but one that says, if I had a clean sheet of paper, what would the organization look like and how do I work towards that? And I agree with what the rest of the board said about onboarding for committees, even down to the basics of how do you make motions, how do you second, that kind of stuff. I think that for those people that have done it and know it, great. For those people that don't, I think it becomes a stumbling block for early participation.
No, I would agree with everything that's been said, and I would also somewhat agree with Mrs. Luck's comment that this may be something that the town manager may want to delegate to someone, given your time constraints, or even outsource. I think it is crucial that we get it completed. I think it's a tool that every board and committee should have, as well as, and I would agree with your comments about personnel evaluations, and I'm very happy that we're moving towards that. It's something that I've been trying to get done for many, many years. So I'm happy that that's moving forward, and hope that that continues and that we can work with the collective bargaining units to implement that. But I think that there has been progress, and I'm sure that there will continue to be more.
And the only thing I would, excuse me, the only thing I would add is that the handbook is important to avoid lawsuits or to handle a lawsuit when one actually comes through. So I think it is important that this could be delegated, but I think that it's important that it actually be a usable handbook that our town employees will actually use. So that's where it's important to have the town manager's involvement. And then maintenance could be turned over to other people.
Obviously, the town manager would oversee it, but I think that coming up with a draft and then fine-tuning it rather than trying to write the entire book yourself.
Assuming we have the funds to get that consultant. So the other part that I would also perhaps expand on the newly appointed officials is giving the boards I would, just as we're doing with goal setting, encourage the various appointed boards to do goal setting and self-evaluations as well. We do that with the reappointment forms for the talent bank, where we ask people to say what do they like, what do they think needs to be improved, what could be done differently. That's a mini self-assessment, but I think that this is not to try to get rid of people, but just to create a dialogue so people actually look at what can we do to improve our operation.
I think, could I just comment on that one? I think the format we used this past year worked well with the workshop, inviting all the boards and committees and to discuss their goals and how we can work together to achieve them. I think that was a good way to address that.
Yep, great.
Okay, before we leave the topic of goals, either performance against them, both for the board or the town manager, is there any comment or input? Would you like to?
I have nothing further to add.
Okay.
I just, one actually thing that I don't know where it really fits in, but I see it as progress is the PEC agreement that provides the new healthcare plan. I think it was beneficial to both the town and the employees. I had employees say they'd appreciated the process and what was achieved through it. And I think that was a success for the town.
And I'll go back, and this is being a one-year historian, that when we came up with these goals jointly with the town manager, there was public comment saying, that seems like an awful lot for the town manager to do effectively in this year, in addition to budgeting, in addition to everything else. So I would say kudos to the town managers for getting as much of all of these done, some very deep, some more deep recently, but considering everything that went on that you had to do on a day-to-day basis, to be able to actually have this list of things, I think that's great. Kudos to us to get as far as we did. I think we were pretty realistic on some of the things as far as identified desire as opposed to actually do economic development. I would hope that when we do our goal setting for this next year that we actually get the next step for some of these things.
I agree with everything you said, and I would encourage us to go deeper as opposed to wider as we set next year's goals. I don't know that we need to be looking for other things to do just to complete some of the stuff we started, because I think they continue to be the most important things for us to work on.
I agree.
Okay, moving on. We have no minutes. This is the thing we already approved. We need to sign, and I do have one warrant, I believe.
That's great.
An accounts payable warrant in the amount of $149,089.62.
Nice two commissions.
What are these now? Okay, these are warrants. Yeah,
Commitments.
warrants for the water commissioner's warrant to collector. Let's see. $7,612.40. And this is the same amount. It's a difference. $7,612.40. A commitment to water commissioners to the accounting officer. It's the quarterly water usage billing, I'm sorry. I've seen one of these since last quarter.
That's right.
All righty. Any action file issues? Any critical committee reports?
I have a couple things that I want to
Sure.
point out. On the MPO meeting, the TIP has been released, the 2019 to 2023 TIP is now open for public comment. It's on the MPO, the MRPC's website, and you can download the entire plan along with the maps. I just wanted to let the community know that in 2020, there is a plan to do an intersection improvement on Route 117 and Route 70 at Lunenburg Road and Route 117 in Lancaster. So 2020, we should see a light and some intersection improvements there, and in my opinion, that's a long time coming.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
The other thing is, as I pointed out, the rail trail, there are funding for that type of work, and there's several significant projects in there related to trails. But the whole tip can be found on the MRPC website. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the Unified Planning Work Plan. There's a couple tasks in the plan right now that do have an impact to Lunenburg. One is the pavement management system. They are working on a regional pavement management plan, and they're actually doing an assessment of various roadways in the member communities. And they're developing a local condition maps for all communities. So that, I think, is something that will be very interesting. They're also offering technical assistance, and they have a database that they're going to make available. So it may be worthwhile to reach out to Brian Doherty of MRPC on that. A lot of work happening in that subject matter. The other thing is the MRTC that I talked about, the Montezut Regional Trails Coalition. They're currently doing regional trail planning and printing, and they are in the process of, again, identifying trails. Unfortunately, Lunenburg trails were not included in the prior round, but we do have an opportunity to have Lunenburg trails included. And I do know that there have been some volunteers that have put together GPS maps that I have available. As you know, I do a lot of trail work, but we do have some GPS coordinates, but I don't know where conservation stands on publishing that data. So perhaps working with conservation and getting ahead of this, but there will be there's a grant available right now that they're doing trail events and workshop planning, marketing and website design, community outreach, grant application assistance. So there's a whole push for regional trail planning and printing included in the plan. And finally, the Lunenburg Walkability and Parking Study has been included, and that will be included provided that there's no objection to that in the comment period. So this plan has been put out for comment and is again available on the MRPC website.
Thank you.
Any other reports? We're going to hold our quarterly financial report till our next meeting. And prior to asking for a motion to enter executive session, I just wanted to mention that the Board of Selectmen meets again on the 15th and the 22nd this month, and to remind you that the annual town election is Saturday, May 19th. Is there any public comment from the public?
Good evening. I'm Michael Ray Jeffries from 1170 Massachusetts Avenue. So I'm here tonight for a couple of reasons. The first is I want to say to our town manager that I think that you're doing a great job for our community. It's certainly, as I go around and speak with different people, I think it's something that is brought up routinely, that it seems as if the management of our town, and I think it's to the credit of the entirety of the board, but I think, the day-to-day, I think the face for most people is the town manager. So I just wanted to relay to you, as a resident, my sincere thanks to you. I also want to turn to you, Paula. And I know that we're in the last couple weeks of your time here, and you've given us more than a decade of your life. I think you're 12 years on this board. And it shows. The level of expertise that you have, it's evident, and your areas of influence are clearly when it comes to MPO, MRPC, with helping finding money for the town, as well as the trailing system. And I think that these, of course, you also ask great pointed questions and voice your concerns, but I think it's you really have left big shoes to fill.
Thank you.
So I really appreciate your service. I know that the job is often thankless, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And my last comment tonight is as we were discussing different ways to get outreach out earlier, one of the things that I think came out in this last kind of couple of weeks is we do put information up, it seems, on the boards around the center of town, but I was in Shirley the other day, and it was their election day. And I knew that because there was a bunch of signs all over their town that said election today. Big red signs with white lettering in the background. And I thought that was something that was really helpful. And so I would encourage that if there is an opportunity for us to do that with debates, with elections, with other town charrettes, with different things that are going on in town, that there's probably only 5 areas that we really have to hit. And there's different ways to design these so that you can change the dates on them with Velcro, So I would encourage that we explore those types of options, so that way we can help increase the participation in some of the activities here in town. So thank you for your time. Again, thank you, Paula.
Thank you
for your
very
service.
much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Katie Adams from Williams Drive. I just had something specific. We've been following along the workshops. And with economic development, a lot of times we talk about what to add, and I just wanted to say, having followed some of it, a lot of the small business owners really feel like it's not necessarily always about what to add, but how to enhance what we already have. And I think that would be a preference of a lot of people, is when we're talking about it, a lot of times it comes as what sort of voids can we fill or what do we add, but we already have so much that we can grow, and I know there's a lot of small businesses working really, really hard to be bigger businesses, and I would prioritize what's already here and see how we can help them grow. So if we do an economic development committee and further it, start with what we have before we look for what we need, because I think we can help people who are already here exceed and fill some of the void we're looking to fill. That's just something I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment from the public? Any public comment from the board?
No, I just would follow up. On the last public comment, I agree, and I think that that's why we're focusing on agriculture and ecotourism, which is to expand on existing businesses. I also think that there are a number of vacant spaces that would obviously benefit from either an expansion of those activities or at least promoting those vacant spaces. But I think that this board, that's why the two main focuses are ecotourism and agritourism.
And I think using the workshops that the town manager has done with the local community, that in the charge, we could certainly make sure that what's in there is to expand and enhance the existing business community.
Which is why we're doing the brochure, and that's, I think we've made a lot of strides in doing that, is trying to, and I hope that more and more businesses get involved, but I think that's what we're trying to do.
Correct.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to enter executive session under Mass General Laws, Chapter 30, Section 21. Reason number 2, to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel if any open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the government's bargaining position and the chair declares so. This is in regard to the town manager's contract, not to return to public session.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor, Mr. McQuaid?
Aye.
Mrs. Bertram?
Aye.
Mr. Ebersol?
Aye.
And aye for Mr.